Today I thought I'd take you on a little winter tour of my ponds. I thought as we go I'll talk a little about each pond, the sort of filters and fish in them, and what maintenance, if any, I do. I'll also talk a little about the plants in and around them. G'day, my name is Kev. The purpose of my channel and website is to help people build and maintain ponds on a budget. I'll start here at the DIY ecosystem pond. In spring and summer this is my favourite pond, but right now it looks pretty bland. In a month or so I'll be able to replant some impatiens that'll bring back some colour, the lilies will come back, and the milfoil and bacopa along the edges will look much nicer. The pond sits under a 15-year-old Japanese maple, and there's a few smaller maples throughout the courtyard. So of course over the autumn this pond gets a lot of leaves deposited in it. I don't put a net over the pond. For one, I'm too lazy and I don't like how they look. I just try and remove as many as I can and let my DIY skimmer do its thing. Even with the skimmer and me netting what I can, some leaves are still going to settle and sink to the bottom of the pond. Because I'm lazy, I also don't remove the impatiens from the previous season, so they just sort of melt and decompose into the pond once we start getting frosts. But even so, the bog in a barrel that's filtering the water is keeping it crystal clear. But because of all the organic material that's breaking down in the pond, you get a lot of decomposition happening in the pond, so you'll see some small amounts of algae and things like that on the rocks and on the plants under the water. The eelgrass in this pond hasn't died off during the winter, and I'm just starting to see the lilies waking up. In this pond I have native pygmy perch, one rainbow fish. I lost the male in the first cold snap of winter, and I've added a few goldfish that I found in a water lily I bought. Eventually what I'll do is I'll move all the natives into the dream pond and just have this pond full of colourful fish. I'm thinking maybe rice fish, but I'm not sure yet. I do have plans to add another pond or maybe a pondless stream on the other side of the courtyard. What I really want is to create a Japanese garden vibe in this whole courtyard area. The pond has a small stream that takes the water from the bog filter back to the pond. Again, the stream is usually full of impatiens and milfoil and bacopa, and it looks good, but right now it just isn't its time to shine. So a few weeks ago I added some cyclamens for some winter colour, but they won't really come into their own until next winter. Up in the bog in a barrel I just have some bacopa, and it's dormant at the moment, but as you can see from the water clarity, the plants really play a minimal role. It's the bacterias and the microorganisms that are keeping everything looking good. So then just off the courtyard we have the Aquascape Pond, and this is my favourite pond at this time of year, pretty much because of its location and the plantings around it. It sits right off the sunniest room in the house, so even when it's freezing outside I can look out the window, see the colourful goldfish, and the waterfall faces that window, which is just nice to look at. Again, there's some milfoil, not looking great, but I leave it here for the fish to hide in and hopefully spawn once the weather warms up. The water clarity in here is incredible. Not much debris falls in this pond, so there's nowhere near the amount of decomposition going inside the pond. This pond has a skimmer and a biological filter, and the water's being turned over 4 times every hour. Goldfish are fantastic. pond fish as they'll graze on the algae. I very rarely feed them any store-bought food. This little shabunkin loves to hide in the skimmer. I used to worry about it, but now I know it just feels safe in there. And here you can see why I leave the milfoil in, even though it's not looking its best. It just holds on for the winter, and it provides an excellent cover for any fish that feel threatened. And I really enjoy the plants around this pond in winter. The euphorbias in flower, the nandinas are nice and red, and the strobilanthus goes a nice deep purple. It just looks good. It's still a very young garden, and once it fills in, I think it's just going to look spectacular every winter. Now we go back up on the deck, and this is what I call the patio aquaponics system. There's nothing in here at the moment. I'm thinking this will be where I do a trial on an anoxic filter. At least the camellias are looking good. Off the deck we go up to the dream pond, but I'll save that for a later update as it's still very much a work in progress. So here we'll check out the little budget Goldfish Pond. This pond has a little half-barrel bog filter. I've got some more eelgrass in here and it has no problems surviving the winter temperatures. The water temperatures here get down to about 5 degrees Celsius. Eventually I'll be expanding this pond so it looks like it's connected to the dream pond. This pond's just been awesome. I never do any maintenance and the water's always clean and clear. This was a really cheap pond to set up. So from here on the other side of the house, I've got the wine barrel ponds. Because these ponds are so sheltered, the impatiens up in the bog filter survive the winter. I think this is their second or third winter. I like to keep duckweed on the surface of these ponds because they're so overstocked. I've got heaps of white clouds in here and they can survive my winter temps no problems. I'm not sure if you can see because it's pretty dark in there, but there's quite a few fry. They're breeding like crazy. At this time of year I feed them once a week. During summer I feed them daily. Even though it's winter, they're still quite active. I love these small barrel ponds because they show just how effective bog filters really are. There is way too many fish and I'm always adding food, and yet the water parameters are always excellent. I never do a water change, I just top up what gets used through evaporation, and the whole time I've had the pond set up, I've only flushed the bog filter once. I mean, if you were renting or only have a small space to work with, something like this is just perfect. G'day, Ninja. The last pond I'll show you is an earthen pond, and that's down behind our nursery. When I had the earth mover moving in the gravel for the nursery, I asked him to dig a pond. At the time I didn't know anything about ponds, so I just let him do his thing. Basically ended up with a hole in the lowest point of the property. For years it was stagnant and smelly. At least when it was dug I added in lots of plants, so they're starting to mature nicely now. About 18 months ago, I added in some rock gravel and some air pumps, and it looks much better now. The water isn't pristine, but it isn't smelly and stagnant anymore. Recently added in lots of plants to the pond itself, so hopefully the health of this body of water is just going to continue to improve. Once the water plants mature a bit more, I'm going to stock this pond with native fish. And that's it for this winter tour. If you guys are interested, I'll do another one in spring. Let me know if that's something you want to see. Thanks for watching. See ya.